Good day and welcome to the introduction to the BLS Paramedic bag. We're going to go through each pouch, explaining what's in it, and then the pros and cons or the uses of each object in the bag. So let's start from the top. As you can see, there are very clear labels, each depicting exactly what's in it. There's adult BVM, pediatric BVM, suction, seizures, airway management, observations, and medications. So it's all very clearly labeled. Same on the front here, catheterization, wound management, and nebulization. So let's jump straight in. Let's start up with the cannulation. Inside this bag is everything to set up a cannulation or to do a cannulation, an IV line, except for your fluids and your admin sets. As you can see, there's syringes, there's three-way valves, water for injection, all the things that you're going to need, such as cannulas, syringes, and hypodermic needles. So hypodermic is for drawing up of medication or administering of medication, and all sorts of different sizes, from 22 gauges to 18 gauges, as well as alcohol swabs. So this is really nice because if you need someone to set up a cannula, then that's got everything you need. This is your wound management kit, everything to manage wounds. So we have basic wound dressings, we have triangle dressings, we have Celox, which is a hemostatic agent. This is going to be used for any sort of major trauma or catastrophic hemorrhage. This can be inserted into a wound as long as it's not on the chest cavity, and it acts as, well, what it does is it creates a fake or a false clot in terms of it increases or speeds up the clotting in that wound. It's for major catastrophic bleeding. This is a Olaze dressing or bandage. What it's used for is to manage multiple different kinds of wounds. So in this dressing, there is a plastic cup on a dressing that can be applied to then give pressure to a wound. It also has a plastic sheath that can be applied to wounds, such as a evisceration if you have any sort of lacerations to the abdomen. It has multiple uses and comes in this nice package. And then this is a blast bandage. This is specifically for blast injuries. So if someone has a limb that's been blown off or ripped off, this is something that you can cover the whole wound and then wrap around and apply pressure to that. So you've got your blast bandage, your Olaze, and your Celox, which is a hemostatic agent. There's also a tourniquet in this bag. Then this is the nebulization pouch, everything you're going to need to nebulize. Inside this bag, there is a peak flow meter, and there are nebulization masks. So how these work is that they get inserted into oxygen. You can take off the top here, lie that flat, and then inside here, the medication is placed depending on what you're wanting to administer. So we can give salbutamol, we can give ipratropium bromide. There's many other medications that can be nebulized. Some important aspects is that this piece of plastic needs to be in the top or it will not function. And then the fluid gets in here. It's pretty much a maximum of about 10 mils. Normally we fill it up with like 5 mils, depending on what you're nebulizing, and the top goes on there. So the pros and cons of this is that if it gets tilted like this, the medication falls out and the nebulization doesn't work. So if someone's lying on their back, you're gonna have a hard time nebulizing with this. And then this is then plugged into oxygen or an air pump or whatever the case is. And then I'm often asked, how many liters per minute should this be put onto? The truth is that as long as you've got enough misting, you have it on the right, and that's normally about 6 to 8 liters per minute. You get adult and infant nebulizations, or pediatric. So that is the front pouch, and over here there is an oxygen cylinder, which makes the bag heavy, but useful because it's all in one bag. So if we jump here to the top, you're gonna see here that we have an adult BVM, suction, pediatric BVM, airway management, seizures, observations, and medications. So adult BVM, what exactly is this? What does it do? How's it work? So this device is used to ventilate patients artificially with positive pressure ventilation. What does it mean is that your normal breathing is negative pressure. So when I inhale, air rushes into my lungs. This is positive pressure. So we are applying pressure into someone's lung. There are valves at the bottom, the valves at the top. So air is only drawn in from the bottom. And then when you ventilate, air comes only out of the top. And then when the patient exhales, the air comes out of the valve at the front. There's a valve that circulates the top. That is where the patient's expired air comes out of, and that's where the air goes in and out. So this can be applied, or this can be plugged into oxygen, which then can provide almost 100% oxygen. This is a 2-person device. 2 people should be using this. It can be used by 1 person, but it is safer and more effective if there are 2 people using this. This isn't specifically an airway video, but we're just discussing how this works. This is the reservoir. It should be inflated at least 2/3 between ventilation. So if it's inflated with oxygen and I'm ventilating someone, it should never actually run out of air. If there's no oxygen attached, it will provide 21% oxygen, which is what is in the air. So that's our BVM. On the other side, there is the pediatric BVM, which is exactly the same thing. It's just a smaller version with different masks. So there is no infant BVM in this bag. There is only adult and pediatric. You do get infant, but the thought process behind that is that you can ventilate an infant with a pediatric bag. You just need to be more careful and apply less pressure. Masks all function the same way. So let's go to airway management. Inside this is all you're going to need to manage an airway in terms of a basic management, so OPAs, NPAs, and any basic airway oxygen administration. So here we have our airway masks. So we have some pediatric masks, we have some adult masks. The two main masks that you're going to see in this bag is a non-rebreather mask, or a partial non-rebreather mask more accurately, and a simple face mask. So what do I mean by that? This is a partial non-rebreather, and I'm going to explain how I know that. So non-rebreather meaning that it isn't rebreathing the same air that they're breathing out. So you plug this into oxygen, you set it to like 10 to 15 liters per minute, and this reservoir inflates, very similar to the BVM. And when they breathe in, the 100% oxygen comes out of the reservoir, and it goes into the patient where they breathe in. And then when they breathe out, there's no mixing of that air. So they're not breathing in and out CO2. They're actually just breathing in the O2 and they're breathing out the CO2, and there's no mix of that. And so therefore a non-rebreather, they aren't rebreathing their own air. The reason why this is a partial non-rebreather is because there are only 2 valves and not 3. You may not be able to see this, but at the bottom here, there is a valve which stops air from going back into this. And then on the sides, there can be 2 valves. But if there's only 1 valve, like this mask, or like this mask, you see there's only 1 valve, and there's no valve on the other side, it means that it's a partial non-rebreather. So it's giving about 60 to 70% oxygen. A reason why people go for the partial non-rebreather and not a non-rebreather is that if it has the 3 valves, it's a non-rebreather, which means that if the oxygen turns off, the patient can actually suffocate. So this is a safety measure. Then there's a simple face mask, which has no reservoir. It gets plugged into the oxygen, and depending on the different kinds of flows or the different kinds of masks, you get specific ones like a Venturi mask. Depending on the design of it will depend on how much oxygen it gives. So no specifics there. On the other side here, we have OPAs, NPAs, so that's a nasopharyngeal airway and an oropharyngeal airway. Like I said, this isn't necessarily an airway course, but just to know what's in the bag. So NPA goes in the nose, OPA, so oropharyngeal, goes in the mouth, keeps the tongue off of the pharynx, and then here is a nasopharyngeal airway, which then goes down there and then gets just above the pharynx. It's nasopharynx, just sits in the pharynx. This actually sits in the hypopharynx. And there we go. And there's different sizes, different colors. That is your basic airway pouch. Other pouches here, we have our OBS pouch. So inside here is our basic observations. We have a temperature probe, we have a stethoscope, we have a pupil torch, SATS probe, even though the life pack has a SATS probe, we have a BP cuff and a device for checking sugar. So that can all be found in the OBS kit. Other than that, there is the medications bag. So inside here, you're going to find all your standard medications that most people carry. You're going to find your aspirin, you're going to find your G10, you're going to find all the medications that you're going to give frequently, just your medications to nebulize. All those things are going to be found in this bag. This bag can vary depending on who's carrying it and where you find it. And then there is a sharps container, which is for disposing of sharps. In this bag, there is no suction because the suction catheters are actually kept with the suction device. And in terms of that, that'll be carried separately because without the suction, you can't suction, so there's no need to have that in here. Same thing with the IV fluids and the administration kits. It isn't actually in the cannulation bag that is kept on the ambulance, but with that, you can still gain access. Other than that, that bag is empty. The other thing to add is that on the back of the bag, there is space to carry things. So here we have our C-collars, and the bag can be carried on your back, and it should be carried with both slings over your shoulders. So that is the BLS Paramedic bag.